Okay, we've been studying the story of Joseph. And last week, he revealed himself to his brothers, that he was the guy who had been giving them such a hard time there in Egypt. And he sent them home with wagons to bring his father and the rest of their families. The Bible tells us that there were 67 people that were blood relatives of Jacob that came from Canaan's land into Egypt with Jacob in the wagons. And they arrived there. They went into Pharaoh. Joseph had them come in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked them about themselves, and they explained that they were, their occupation was cattle herders and sheep herders, and that was what they preferred to keep doing. So Pharaoh told Joseph, you pick the best part of the land, and you have them settle in that part, the part that's best for the animals. And if there's some of them that are really good at what they do, put them in charge of my animals too. So Joseph took them, I don't know if you can see it, he took them to this part of Egypt, which is the land of Goshen. It's the Delta region, and it had more water, more consistent water throughout the year. The whole Nile River floods every year, but the Delta region stayed better watered most of the time, so it was better for the animals. It had more pasture and such. And that's where they settled. Jacob spoke to Pharaoh, and he told Pharaoh he was only 130 years old. I read it this morning, and the numbers just slipped out of my head. He was 130 years old and wasn't anywhere near as old as his dad and his dad's dad had been. And he blessed Pharaoh. The Bible tells us that Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years. So he lived to the end of the famine, and there was 5 more years for the famine. And then he lived another 12 years in Egypt with Joseph taking care of his whole family. When it came near time for him to die, let me switch my scene out here a little bit. Do it quickly. I destroyed an entire castle. Most of the time I can get away with one scene, but some stories you need more. When it came time that Jacob was dying, Joseph came to him with his 2 sons. Now, before the famine started, Joseph had married and had 2 sons born to him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And he brought them to Jacob for Jacob to bless. And so Joseph stood with Manasseh here and Ephraim here, and our flannel's a little deceptive. If they were born before the flood, they were probably they were in their late teens or getting close to 20. So pretend they're young men. He stood with Manasseh on his left and Ephraim on his right, so that when he pushed them forward to kneel in front of Jacob, Manasseh would be at Jacob's right hand, which is traditional to bless the oldest child with the right hand, and then the next with the left hand. So he put them towards Jacob so they would be blessed correctly. And Jacob did this. And Joseph tried to move his hands and said, no, Dad. Manasseh's the oldest one. Put your right hand on Manasseh. And Jacob said, I know I'm nearly blind, but I do know what I'm doing. Manasseh will be a great man. He will be the father of a great tribe in Israel. But his brother's going to be greater. His brother's going to be so much greater, so much bigger of a tribe, that they will be referred to as Ephraim and Manasseh, not Manasseh and Ephraim, as would be traditional. In fact, Jacob adopted those 2 boys as his own sons, and from that time on, Ephraim and Manasseh are tribes in Israel, just like Judah and Issachar and Simeon and all the other tribes. They were counted as if they were Jacob's children. From this point on, we never talk about the tribe of Joseph. We talk about the tribe of Ephraim and tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. Jacob then gave blessings and prophecy concerning the rest of his children and what would happen to them and their descendants. And then he died. They took him all together. They went to Canaan, and they buried him in the same cave that Abraham and Isaac and their wives had been buried in. And then they came back to Egypt, and they lived in Egypt. The Bible says that Joseph lived to be 110 years old. And after Jacob died, his brothers were afraid that he was going to now kill them, now that Jacob was dead, but he reassured them that he wasn't going to, that it was all in God's plan, and he didn't even have a right to be mad, and he wasn't mad, and all's good. I'm still going to take care of you. When Joseph died, he told all of the children of Israel, there will come a day when you will go back to Canaan's land, because God gave that to my grandpa Abraham and my great-grandpa Abraham and my grandpa Isaac and to my dad Jacob. That land belongs to us, and you will go back to that land, and when you do, take my bones with you. And years down the road, which we'll get to in a few weeks, when they did take his bones with him and buried him in that same cave his ancestors were buried in. And so this finishes up Joseph, and it finishes up our book of Genesis. We've got remember our book of Genesis card, where the first third is about Adam and Eve and Noah, and the middle part is about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the last part is about Joseph. Well, we just killed Joseph off, so we can go on to the next book of the Bible at our next lesson. Okay? Let's sing a song. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning, burning, burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray, hallelujah. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning, burning, burning. Give me oil till the break of day. I will sing, Hosanna, sing.